everyone, and welcome to my channel, The DIY Crafting Muse. My name is Vicki, and today we're going to be working on a paper mache garland. This project is, I guess, a dupe. I found a very cute, extra large garland, this like wooden garland piece at Target, and I think it was like $30 to $50, and I'm going to show you how to make it with some Dollar Tree products and some paper mache. I think this project turned out to be around $5 to $6, so very affordable. It just takes a little craft time. To make this project, you'll need at least 2 packs of the square foam dice from the Dollar Tree. You'll need some way of putting a hole into the foam dice as well as the styrofoam balls. And you'll also need at least 2 packs of the styrofoam balls from the Dollar Tree as well. To string this all together, I'll be using some twine, and so I chose a drill bit. Again, I'm going to use a drill for this so I can create that hole through the center of the foam dice as well as the styrofoam balls. And I'm just going to take that, make sure it's nice and set in. I think this was 532 inch, so it's a pretty small drill bit here. Just remember, when you go to drill through the center, you want to make sure that you've got something underneath there that will protect. I did it on both sides just to make sure it pulled all that foam out, and then just use, I stacked one on top of the other just to make sure I didn't drill through my desk. This is just a desk I have in my office craft room, so I didn't want to damage the desk at all. So just take the necessary precautions, safety glasses, things like that. You can also, if you've got more equipment, I know there's different vice grips you can use to make sure that you don't slip with the drill as well, but just make sure you take all safety precautions to protect yourself and any of the equipment that you have around you. I'm going to continue on and also drill through those styrofoam balls. I'm going to leave the paper mache recipe that I'm going to use. If you haven't done paper mache before, it's just water and flour and some salt. The salt you don't want to skip, so the salt, it helps prevent any sort of molding or bacteria growth. I'll leave the recipe for the paper mache paste in the description box below. And I put a couple extra things in there. So once I mixed my paper mache batter up, I also put a little bit of water and some white paint because it kind of has a yellowish tint to it. So I wanted to make it a little bit whiter so I didn't have to paint. So, and the hot Mod Podge to kind of help make it a little bit more like water resistant, if that makes sense. So again, I'll leave the recipe in the description box below. You will want to, make this on the thicker side. You don't want it too thin. I would say maybe like a crepe batter, so a little bit thinner than a pancake batter. So traditionally, or at least the way that I learned to do paper mache, you use old newspapers. Now, again, because I'm going to be using this in a decorative item, newsprint can get a little bit like grayish, so I'm taking some tissue paper. This is just tissue paper. I think I got this at Costco because it comes in a nice big pack. cutting it into strips just to make it a little bit easier to work with. But you could also use potentially later on, I tried paper towel, so like a thin paper towel, that would work too. It really just depends on the texture that you're going for, and of course how long you want to take. Now the tissue paper takes a little bit longer. When I tried it with the paper towel, of course it has a little bit thicker of a coverage. So again, this is where, what you use, leave it up to preference to what you prefer. Now to get started, I just took some of the strips of the tissue paper and I dipped it into that paper mache, and then I started applying it around that styrofoam ball. Now the reason that this is, how I started was because those styrofoam balls from the Dollar Tree, now depending on where you get yours, they might not be as porous or as lumpy, but I really wanted to make sure that I could get a nice good coat of the paper mache product as well as the actual tissue paper to start filling in those gaps and nooks and crannies. Stick around because I'll show you another technique along with using the paper towels. I also kind of switched my technique just to try and figure out which way worked best. So stick around, I'll show you another way of how I did this around the foam squares as well as these styrofoam balls, as well as you want to stick around for the finished product because I think it turned out so good, and you can barely tell that this is not something that you had to spend $30 to $50 on, and you only had to spend $5 to $6 worth of supplies. So as you finish this, you'll see I'm just kind of poking in and making sure that the hole that I had drilled through was nice and covered, so it was nice and smooth. So later on, when I went to feed through the twine, none of that styrofoam, popped out. The other thing that you'll need is you'll need a way that you can kind of dry these. As I'm starting on this next foam piece, let me just kind of explain what I did to dry these in between. So this is just like with any paper mache, it's got to take some time to dry out. So I took those skewers that I had, and I took some of the extra foam dice that I didn't use for this project, and I stuck the skewer through the foam dice, paper mache foam dice, and then stuck it into that extra foam dice so then I could set it outside to dry. I also have a wood block that I use, and let me know. I want to do a DIY video. I can show you how I created this because it's not just for drying. You can also use it for appetizers and things like that. But this is an important step. As you finish these, you're going to want to make sure that these thoroughly dry. You do have the salt in the paper mache batter or paste that will help inhibit the molding, but you also want to make sure that it just doesn't set funny. So again, you might have something there. You can also use some floral foam that you can stick these into, but just set those so they're not touching anything, and then again, once you get a couple of these done, you'll just go ahead and set them outside. Hopefully you have a nice sunny day. If not, it just depends. If you're in an area that has more humidity, it might take a little bit longer for them to dry. You might even want to keep them inside, again, if you've got a lot of humidity, depending on where you live. So you determine where you set these, but again, they're probably going to have to sit there. Mine sat out, I'm in California, so it is dry and hot during the summertime. So it only took about 3 to 4 hours for these to dry completely. But again, you might have to let these sit overnight or even for a couple days, again, depending on your weather. there's that wood block I told you about. So you can see I'm just kind of sticking those in there, and then what you can't see is I'm sticking them over on a windowsill temporarily while I continue to create these. Now this is where I'm going to switch up my technique a little bit. I was doing quite a few of these, and so I ended up just dipping that styrofoam ball into the paper mache paste, and then you can see I'm just getting it nice and coated there, and then I am rolling up that tissue paper and then taking a paintbrush and painting down any of the areas that are dry, so I can make sure that this tissue paper sticks really, really well. Again, find out what works for you. I did a couple different, techniques here, but again, do what you're comfortable with. Now, I will tell you that this took a little bit of time. I would say like at least an hour, and of course that drying time. So give yourself some time to do this project. Once all of my cubes and circles were dried, I put that white paint into the batter to try to, even out that yellow tone that comes across. You can see in that wet batter. So they had a nice white finish, and now I'm just taking a little bit of a taupe, very light brown acrylic paint. You can also use chalk paint if you want, but I'm just going around the corners a little bit and kind of distressing it a little bit, almost like a reverse, like weathering, if you will. And then I took a little fan brush and kind of brushed this onto some of the styrofoam balls, again, just to kind of make it look a little bit weathered, almost like there was wood underneath that. So these were wooden balls that were painted white, and that some of that wood color was kind of coming through. Once you add that distressing to all of your foam, paper mache dice, and styrofoam balls, you'll let that dry for a little bit too, again depending on your environment. Give it some time. And then next, once that was all dried, I'm going to go ahead and string through my twine so I can turn this into a giant jumbo garland. To thread this twine through, I'm using a craft needle. I think they're also called doll needles. Now these will come in plastic or in metal. This is actually, although it looks metal, it actually is plastic. It's just a really hard plastic. I suggest you try to hot glue that twine onto the needle, so it's not too lumpy. Just kind of thread it through and then put some hot glue, so therefore you don't have to tie that knot. You can also see that I'm just using one of my skewers to kind of help push that needle through, just because it's not as long as the foam dice and the styrofoam ball. Use what you have on hand. Of course, you might even be able to use a skewer, I'm not sure, but this is what worked for me. So you'll see I'm trying to space these out a little bit, just so to make sure that, again, because it's a little bit clunky, this is a jumbo garland, so give yourself some room, so if you need to slide these squares and spheres around as you're kind of hanging on something, again, give yourself some room to kind of play with it. Now I'm just going to end up doing the tassel at the end. I've done lots, I've included this in lots of my videos, but I just took a wood piece that I had picked up from the Dollar Tree, and I wrapped that twine around it 50 times. So I wanted to have a nice, thick, chunky tassel to go along with this nice jumbo size garland. Next, you're just going to go ahead and tie that loop that you just made, that you looped around 50 times, tie it onto the end of the garland. Make sure you got a nice knot there. And then take an extra piece of twine and you're going to loop it around that top piece. You can see over on the left hand side how I've done that. You're just going to, it's not even a third, it's less than that. It's just that little small portion. You're going to tie that around that top portion, and then you're just going to loop it around a little bit and make sure that's tied nice and tight. And then you can use a little bit of hot glue to just tie those or stick those ends down so they don't stick out. This just kind of finishes it off a little bit. Once we have that looped around and that's nice and secured, that bottom part, you're just going to go ahead and cut it so it's not looped at the bottom anymore. And then you're going to go ahead and give it just a little bit of a trim to make sure all those edges or end pieces are nice and uniform. I think this turned out so cute. Again, the inspiration piece that when I saw this was over at Target for $30. I don't think that you can order them anymore, so I don't even think it's an option to order these. So this might be your only route if you want to do something like this jumbo giant garland. Let me know what you think. I love how this turned out. I think it is such an amazing statement piece. I just simply kind of wrapped it around one of my planters here in my office, and I can't say enough about this project. I've been wanting to do it for a very long time. Let me know in comments if you know what you think about it, and then also if you try this, if you've done it in a different way or a different technique. There is one other technique I was looking at, but the price was a little bit comparable to the one you could order, so this is the route that I went to make sure it was nice and affordable and that it still gave that great statement piece. Have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.